Oh my God, I am on a roll running my mouth online today. This is going to work in tandem with an interview I watched. So I'm going to post it down below and give you guys the timestamp for the section I'm referring to. This is also something that I posted on Instagram, and they are talking about systems that are obeyed regardless of having a witnessed eye, or whether or not it is causing trouble or danger, or whether or not it is safe, and that you're following the system simply because the system is there and you're scared of the repercussions, even though there's nobody around. It's talking about being controlled by invisible forces that lie outside of you. Now, this can allude to anarchy to a degree, or disobeying rules, whatever, but I think he's talking about it more in the conscious use of when is it smart to obey this rule and when is it not. This goes in tandem as well with the last video I posted about why are the rules made and who made them. When you know that, then you know whether or not you're supposed to be following them. This is everything. We all struggle with this in our teens with our parents. This is unjust rules in the workforce, unfair discrimination, everything. Who is setting the rules? Why are they setting them? Why are they in place? Is it a benevolent rule? These are really important questions to ask, but we're not taught to ask these questions. Goes back to the same conspiracy thing we all talk about in school systems. We're taught what to think, not how to think. We're taught how to be civilized and how to behave, and we're coded for that, and we're not taught behave as you will, say what you will, even though it's in our fucking constitution, okay? We're taught you must do it this way, you must behave this way, this is morality, this is what's good, you have to do this, right? In more or less words or more or less actions, that's what we're taught. We're not taught to question things. We're not taught to question rules, the very fabric of what creates a system, let alone just, you know, the free will and autonomy and all of that good stuff. We're definitely not taught to question or disobey a rule. I remember when I would start purposely breaking dress code when I was in high school, the dean of my high school tried to say something to me, and I didn't even mean to. It wasn't even something sarcastic I tried to say, or like a short retort or anything to get my way. It was something that I naturally thought in my brain, and I said it out loud because what I thought he was saying was incorrect, and I shut up the whole room. There was another, I couldn't remember who, but there was another administrator present, and the dean was present, and my mother was present during this conversation. I think I was about 14 or 15. And I got in trouble for wearing shorts that were too short, and I basically refused to go to detention for it. And, you know, I talked about the fact that my shorts ride up because the way that my body is built, I'm very lower body heavy. Okay, this is a thing we're talking about now in schools, with how dress codes are much more unfair to women, and preaching that societal problem of a woman must cover her sexuality because it is shameful, or a woman must cover her body more than a man, right? So if you look in most dress codes, I think there's more hair rules and things like that, like rules about belts and maybe sleeve length are equal for men and women. But, you know, I know things with hair, there's more rules for men than women, but in general, the clothing rules apply to women much more than men. So they tried to give me detention for this, and I refused to go to detention. So I got in trouble, and I think I was threatened with a suspension, or in-school suspension, or some kind of other repercussion. I don't quite remember, but they threatened me with further repercussions and discipline because I refused to obey their rules. And the point that I had made with my shorts is that they did actually fit the length, but when I was moving, they would move a certain way because the way my body was built. And, you know, I talked about the fact that it was unfair discrimination based on my body type, and the fact that my shorts don't actually break the rule. And, you know, when you're measuring my shorts, why are you as an adult looking that closely at a teenager's shorts? Things like that. I made very valid points, and they were not happy about it at all. And because I was willing to stand up for myself and refuse this punishment actively for something that I did not feel as a female I did anything morally wrong, even though it disobeyed the rules, the dean said something very snotty to me, which, why are you arguing with a teenager? That's highly immature for somebody who had gray hairs at the time. But he argued back with me and said, you just think you own the world, don't you? And I retorted to him very quickly and I said, well, it's a lot better than thinking that the world owns you. If you really have to pick one path, I just said that one sentence, by the way. If you really have to pick one path, you are much better off thinking that you own the world than thinking that the world owns you. And most of us are taught to think that the world owns us. And that is part of the inverted problem with Matrix 3D. Now, this applies to what he was saying. With the very land that you walk on and the types of rules you obey. It's because you think that you are owned by the world. And I preach this message all the time. This goes in line with questioning why those rules are there. Are they meant for safety or are they meant for control? Are they meant for well-being? What is the intent? And, you know, I think questioning that, and then what is the efficacy of these rules when they're actually executed? Does it harm the public or does it help the public? And most systems that we've had in place up until this point have had their benefits here and there, but a lot of them are highly detrimental to the, I think, overall scope of society. Or if they were not detrimental, a lot of them stay far beyond when they are outdated and when the next system needs to siphon in and, or the next system needs to siphon out the previous one and usher itself in. Now, I talk about this with usually referring to the one quote in the Federalist Papers, number 51, that most of us are pretty familiar with from grade school. And, you know, paraphrasing it, it's essentially saying that if men were angels, we would not need government. Now, the people who advocate for anarchy, who allude to these things when they're talking about disobeying the law and disobeying society's rules and disobeying social trends, you know, whatever it is. Sometimes it's not, oh my God, overthrow the government. Sometimes it's something as simple as wear the shorts that you want to wear, or no, you don't have to say hello or goodbye in that way because that's the tedium conversation everybody else uses, you know. You don't have to be externally governed when you're internally governed. So what a lot of anarchists actually believe in is strict government, but it doesn't come across that way. And then of course there are certain, every philosophy has a branch. There is an unhealthy branch that just believes in absolute chaos, which would lead to the detriment of any society. But what a lot of anarchists believe in is actually very strict government, but coming from the inside instead of the outside. And that is what essentially the Federalist Papers that help the bedrock of our Constitution actually says. It's that you wouldn't need an external force or an invisible force controlling you as a person if you were internally controlled by your own force, if you were benevolently and morally controlled by your own internal force. And that obviously comes through self-fortification and purification and discipline and all of those things. And am I an expert at that? No, but I know that I'm in the general upward trajectory. So the point that I want to make with that is everything that they're referencing in this video has to do with what I would consider to be pure or benevolent anarchy, which revolves around no longer needing essentially a parent because you're internally grown up. And that is the role that government plays in general. It is there to regulate and clean up, or at least in its original purpose. Yes, I know that's not always what it's used for, and it's a money game and all of that other stuff, at least so much as my opinion is concerned. But in its pure form, government is there to oversee what you yourself do not oversee. So the more you can oversee yourself, observe yourself, control yourself, the less those systems need to exist. So the only way that we're ever going to eradicate this problem is if we start raising up as a society into our own benevolent power and into discipline and things like that, and emotional control and control of the mental schemas of the self. And this is, again, why the push for spiritual evolution and the push for self-actualization is happening now, because it's simply moving through Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's moving from, okay, as a general population and species, we've moved beyond survival mentality. Survival mentality is great. It's a skill that we needed, but we don't need to function from the main perspective of that schema anymore. It's outdated. So we are ushering in a new time period, which is what a lot of New Age people are calling ascension, and what I think Christians would believe would be the second coming of Christ. What that means is that we're moving towards an evolution where we no longer have to function from these outdated systems, from the types of external governments, and I don't mean political government, I mean anything that governs you, that are in place, because we are becoming more and more regulated, so we don't need certain things outside of ourselves, and we're becoming much more powerful as a people, and we're moving through Maslow's hierarchy of self-actualization and moving from survival mentality into developing personality and power and strength and ego and spirituality and spiritual gifts and ultimately enlightenment and wisdom and knowledge, ascension, all of that. So we're just moving up the pyramid right now.